quick question, Councillor?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and ask now then?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask the Treasurer if she could give us an update on the expected funding from the upper levels of government that was going to help us get through 2022. She was quite confident that this would be forthcoming, and I'm just looking for an update, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor, for the opportunity to answer that question. There have been two announcements. We know of both, one from the federal government. They have made an announcement to help transit agencies across the country for $750 million. In the last little while, the province of Ontario has also matched that pledge to help municipalities. What we're hearing is there has been a deal that's been struck between the province and the federal government. As we know, there's an election happening at the provincial level at this point. We need to get through the election process. And what we're hearing is we will likely receive word in terms of allocations in August or September. So that's our expectation. Meanwhile, what you will see in the reports that come to you, you're seeing a deficit obviously in Q1 because we cannot confirm that exact amount. But as soon as we know, we will share that information both with Mayor and Council.
And just as a follow-up, Chair, if I may, and we have enough reserves and resources to offset deficits throughout the calendar year until we actually get the money in the bank?
So we have a plan. We had talked about that plan during budget time, if you recall, and it's plan A, B, and C. The first obviously is receiving that money through Safe Restart. What we have received for January is an allocation of, I think it's $10.8 million that is booked and received. So it's covered off our deficit for January. For February and March, you're seeing that deficit. We have money sitting in the transit operating reserve that could help us if we have to cover those pieces. And then if you recall, sort of plan A was obviously receiving money from other levels of government to see us through the year. Plan B is our own watching our expenses, so our discretionary expenses, some of the vacancies that we have, leveraging reserves. The last resort, if we don't receive either enough funds or any of the funds from another level of government, is to leverage reserves across the organization. We had talked about those water reserves, but they do have to be repaid back over time. So that's what we have in terms of that mitigation plan. And then obviously plan C is looking at the service levels. So the hope is, and where my thinking is on this, in terms of the deal that has been struck, we should see enough money that comes through the Safe Restart to carry us through the year.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. So is the report received, everybody?
Received.
Okay, thank you. So item number 4 is the OC Transport Performance Report for the period ending December 2021. And there's no presentations, no delegations for that. There will be a slide or two in Renee's presentation as part of the update to give you some highlight to this. But does anybody want to hold this report, or shall we receive it?
You hold it, Chair, please.
Hold it, okay. Okay, number 5 is the status update for Transit Commission inquiries and motions. For the period ending May 6, 2022. Again, no presentation, no delegations. Is there any questions of staff, or shall we receive the report?
Received.
Received.
Received, okay, thank you. All right, and so now we'll go back to item number 1, which is the Confederation Line and Bus Service update. And we'll receive that update from Renee. So go ahead when you're ready, Renee.
Thank you very much, Chair Hublé, and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as usual. I've been looking forward to today's Transit Commission meeting. We have a lot to update you today. Our leadership team is now whole. Ridership levels continue to trend upwards. We have an extensive OC Transpo operator recruitment campaign on the way, and we're working hard to strengthen our customer outreach so we can better understand their current and future needs. There are just a few of all the items we will touch on today. If we can go with the slide, please, I would appreciate. Next slide, please. Thank you. As I mentioned at our last meeting, I'm going to begin each update by answering some outstanding questions to close the loop and highlight how we are addressing your feedback. At the last Transit Commission, we had a question about smartphones, apps, and tracking electric buses. At this time, the apps cannot show the location of in-service electric buses, as that information is not currently available on the city's open data feed. Adding this to the open data feed is technically possible, but would require staff time. We will look to add this feature in the future. Another question was regarding customers' fare choices and whether they've changed since the beginning of the pandemic, and especially how many customers use passes compared to single ride fares. Our analysis shows that single ride fares increased by 5%, or from 21% of all trips in 2019 to 26% in 2021. The percentage of all transit trips made using passes, including the U-Pass, decreased by 5% from 70% in 2019 to 72% in 2021. We have seen a greater increase in customer purchasing discount single ride fares. Also, discount monthly pass purchases have increased at a faster rate than regular fare passes. We were also asked how many emergency shelter passes were distributed to clients. In March, OC Transpo provided 41 passes to shelters for their clients. It's important to remember that through much of March, no fares were charged on the Haute-Rhin and downtown bus routes. March was also the first month on the Shelter Pass program. We anticipate an increase in the second quarter, and we will update you with those numbers later this summer. And finally, we were asked how much ward volumes increased in recent months compared to the pre-pandemic levels. Our colleagues in traffic services report that road volume data taken from 7 major intersections in Ottawa shows that traffic is increasing gradually back toward 2019 levels. In the first quarter of 2022, traffic volumes were approximately 82% of pre-pandemic levels. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to tell you that our department leadership team is now complete. Richard Older-John, our leadership team, as the new Director of Engineering Services just 2 days ago on May 16th. I'm sure many of you already know Richard quite well. Richard is a professional engineer and has amassed a wealth of experience, with over 20 years of those working with the City of Ottawa. Richard joined the Light Rail Construction Project Management Team in 2013, and most recently was manager of the Rail Infrastructure Branch for the Stage 2 Haute-Rhin project. An engineering services area will better support the technical business need of our work. They will also add greater engineering oversight to our operations and support major innovative projects, such as our ambitious zero emission bus program. Richard, can you please turn on your camera and say a quick hello to the members of the Transit Commission?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you very much for the invitation to join the Transit Commission. I am very much looking forward to working with you all and working with the team at OC Transpo to work on the General Manager's 5 priority areas for transit services.
Thank you so much, Richard, and welcome again. I'm very, very happy. Next slide, please. As you can see, this is our organizational leadership team, and now it's complete. I'm so proud to work alongside these inspirational leaders. Together, we'll continue to work hard for our customers, our staff, Transit Commission, and Council. Next slide, please. As noted in the Council memo I sent you earlier this week, Rideau Transit Group will start seasonal track and maintenance work on Haute Line 1, just east of Herdman Station this June. These activities happen annually to ensure the long-term sustainability and reliability of the system, and they will improve ride quality and customer comfort. To allow this work to occur, Haute Line 1 from Blair Station to Herdman Station will close at 10 p.m. from June 5th to 7th and June 12th to 14th. This work is happening at night when ridership is low to minimize customer impacts as much as possible. Arran bus service will be available for customers during the partial closure. Maintenance activities include switch heater calibrations, rail repairs and inspections to the track east of Herdman Station, as well as general cleaning and vegetation control. Later this summer, additional maintenance work will take place, including automating Belfast Yard. We will provide the Transit Commission and our customers with lots of advance notice once the dates and details are finalized. Next slide, please. I wanted to provide an update on our first quarter financial status. As you can see, our operating budget was a deficit of 70.9 million, as my colleague just said. The deficit is attributed of two things: the emergence of the Omicron variant early in the year and associated cost and revenue loss because of it, and the unplanned occupation in our downtown core, which resulted in more or less fair revenue and unplanned operation cost. With these two unforeseen incidents beyond us, we anticipate improvements in the next quarter. We expect that as ridership continues to recover, revenue will come closer to matching our budgeted projections. The city's chief financial officer, my colleague Wendy Stevenson, continues to work with the federal and provincial governments as we wait for their confirmation that Safe Restart funding we will provide it again to offset 100% of the fair revenue lost because of the pandemic. Wendy is also leading this discussion with the federal government to recover the fair revenue lost because of the occupation, as she said earlier too. Next slide, please. Last month, I reminded the Transit Commission that we could be implementing adjusted spring schedules to comply with Canada Labour Code legislation. Our customers are currently experiencing a higher number of bus trip cancellations than we would like to see. They are not caused by a lack of available buses, but instead due to operator shortages. I take this opportunity to apologize to our customers, and I promise you that we're working very, very hard to resolve this situation. These shortages are because of several factors, including COVID-19 impacts, retirements, and other attrition, as well as the mandatory work schedule adjustment to meet the CLC requirements for scheduled work breaks. We know this is a problem, but the good news is that we are implementing many solutions. The CLC break requirement, which is a 30-minute break for every 5 hours of driving, is the law, and we are following it. We are in a period of transition, and we are navigating how best to plan our services around these mandated changes. As I'm sure you can anticipate, the implementation of additional breaks demands significant coordination of logistics and resources. Throughout this shift, OC Transpo's top priority is to mitigate any effects on routes or service to customers. To support these changes and meet the new service needs, we are using a variety of solutions, including hiring more operators, returning operators to their positions, actively monitoring performance and making adjustments to our service through our control center. OC Transport remains committed to working collaboratively with our employees to implement these complex scheduling changes and to action feedback from employees where possible. You will recall that Council approved funding for 80 new bus operator positions to support the CLC changes. On top of these new positions, we will be hiring 200 more new operators to fill upcoming vacancies as a result of attrition, LRT expansion, retirements, and employees moving to new roles in the organization. We have implemented a robust and targeted recruitment campaign for new bus operators, as well as increased training sessions throughout the year to prepare new recruits and fill positions as quickly as possible. This recruitment campaign is being promoted on social media, ads in buses and bus shelters, and on digital screens, just to name a few. Our team doing outreach and working with community partners to reach potential candidates. As part of the recruitment campaign material, we've highlighted and interviewed existing operators in our ads. They are the faces of OC Transport, and their love and commitment for their jobs truly shines through. The recruitment process is extensive and aims to hire individuals focused on customer service. I believe we have an example of one of the operator recruitment videos to show you today. I would ask the clerk office to please show the video now. Thank you. The sound is not.
There's no sound, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Apologies for that. I will restart the video with sound. Thank you for letting me know.
Things I like the most about being an OC Transpo operator is the view from my office window changes every single second. I really enjoy working on my own as well as working as a team. I chose to become an OC Transpo bus operator because of the customer service aspect. I really enjoy working with people, and this was a great opportunity to work with all types of people all over the city. Some really are dependent on the bus service that we provide, so I feel like I'm giving back to the community and helping them reach their destination. Well, I have passengers that show their gratitude in different ways. I had a customer who worked at a community garden, and when he was coming back from his visit, he dropped off some vegetables for me. Well, I would tell potential candidates that it would be a great opportunity. You are very well supported and very well taken care of.
My name is Kay, and I've been a bus operator for 8 years.
Thank you very much. So we have 4 videos like that, 2 in French and 2 in English. I'm very, very, very happy for that. We can go to the next slide, please. We know that hiring bus operators will take some time. So until that occurs, next slide, please. Until that occurs, there are several active steps we're taking to improve service. Our priority is providing reliable service to our customers. So our effort are focused on maintaining service and reducing the impact of routes. These steps include returning operators on temporary assignments and in relief roles back to their bus operator positions, providing additional support to minimize leave time, implementing improvements to the June booking process, strategically placing operators and buses at key locations, adding support for section heads and the TOCC to increase oversight, implementing strategic service adjustment and refinements to support priority routes. I will continue to update on progress to implement these measures. Next slide, please. In April, the province of Ontario extended its mask mandate in high-risk settings, which includes public transit until June 11th. Your decision to make masks mandatory under the city's transit bylaw also is still in effect. As such, masks will remain mandatory on all OC Transpo and Paratranspo buses and on O-Train and at transit stations until Ottawa Public Health and Dr. Vera Etches recommends the mandate be lifted. At this time, she has advised it is too soon to make a decision beyond the June 11th date. OC Transpo continues to work closely with Ottawa Public Health on our masking messaging and policies, and we're taking every measure to ensure the continued safety of our customers and staff. We will continue to keep you and our customers updated as the situation evolves. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, and following some questions and feedback we received at previous commission meetings, we have been engaging directly with our customers so that we can better understand their current travel needs. Our customer outreach staff have been on site speaking with our customer and asking them questions about their demographics, trip origins and destinations, their preferred payment, and how if their transit habits have changed since the pandemic. These are all important questions, and the answers will help us plan our services around the needs of our customers. We will bring you the results from this outreach at your next meeting. As I stated earlier, we have had a very, very busy month. Thank you for your continued support. I would like now to pass the floor to Troy Charter, who will provide an update on our key performance indicator. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you, Madame Amilcar. You can move to the next slide, please. That'd be great. And then just one more. Okay, so this initial slide is just a bit of a summary of some of our key performance metrics, bit of a summary of the next couple slides that I'll be walking through. So, at a high level on the rail side of things, the service delivery since March, we've been operating at 99% or higher in terms of service delivery. So we're pleased there. On the bus side of things, you heard from Madame Amilcar that we have seen a slight increase in the number of canceled trips on the bus side of things. So we're implementing short and long-term strategies to improve that reliability. So we're not at the high level green there, but we still have a high degree of reliability, but we recognize that there's some improvements that we can make in that regard. And then in terms of ridership, we are seeing month over month increases from 2020 compared to 2021, and we're seeing we're hopefully seeing a trend, and I'll go through that in a little bit with regards to month in 2022 as well in terms of ridership. Do you go to the next slide, please? So more specifically on O-Train Line 1, the service delivery, as I mentioned, we've been at 99% service delivery or greater since March. And so far for the month of May, we're actually at 100% of that service delivered. The key important points to note on this graph here is, and I know it's a little bit hard to see, but those light gray dots that you see around that blue line, those are all the actual performance achieved on specific days, and you can see that they're all really congregating around that 99 to 100%, and that's exactly what we want to see. That's demonstrating that there's both reliability and sustainability on both a monthly basis, but on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that I want to point out, and that's those orangish red dots that you see. I believe that was a request to add that to the chart at a previous Transit Commission meeting, and those are the dates in which we've had to implement R1 replacement bus service. And you can see that the last time that we had to do that was, early to mid-March. And actually the last occurrence in which we had to implement R1, it was due to some police activity at Tunney's Pasture Station. So we're seeing some really good reliability, and I think that's going to reflect in what our customers are seeing with regards to the performance of the line. So it's really encouraging to see, but we recognize that we need to see this continue for the long term, not just for a couple months. So, but it's a good trend that we're on right now. Go to the next slide, please. On the so that was the service delivery side. On the fleet availability side of things, this is one of the charts that we go through daily with RTM. We track the availability of the entire fleet, not just the fleet that's in service, because we want to know what's going on with our fleet at all times. So this is a snapshot in time, because vehicles are constantly coming in for various inspections, preventative maintenance, or just general day-to-day repairs. So this report was pulled on Monday, May 16th. On that date, we had 18 trains available for service, or 36 cars. Our requirement right now is 15 trains available for service at all times. And I'm pleased to report that since the beginning of April, every single day we've had 15 or more trains available for service. So our customers are seeing better service reliability, and in terms of our vehicle availability, we're seeing they've been able to sustain that over a month and a half approximately. So we expect to see that continue. With regards to the 5 vehicles that are currently unavailable for service, or as of this snapshot, one of the vehicles was out of service due to its 77,500 kilometer inspection. It was also ongoing a windshield repair. It had a chip in one of the windshields. One of the vehicles was out for its 300,000 kilometer inspection. And then one of the other vehicles in the medium-term maintenance was in for some maintenance repairs associated with its braking system. There are 2 LRVs that are out for long-term maintenance as well. And those are 2 vehicles that have been associated with derailments. And the plan for those 2 vehicles is so that not to occupy a hoist in a bay at our maintenance storage facility here in Ottawa. Also, an RTM had made arrangements to have those transported to Kingston, where the repairs can be done without impacting our day-to-day availability and not impacting our service. So that's underway right now, actually. Next slide, please. Moving to the bus service delivery side of things, you can see, once we got through the winter months and once we got past the truck occupation, we did see an increase in our bus service delivery. March and into April, we're just over 98% of service delivered. But as we mentioned earlier, with the April service change and the changes associated with the Canada Labor Code and the 30-minute breaks, that was the primary change that we see with the April service change. We have been managing the attrition and the impacts of COVID, but that additional piece that we're trying to manage has resulted in an increase in the number of canceled trips that our customers are experiencing. So we need to actively watch this and take those steps that Madame Amilcar had mentioned to get back up to the level of service that we expect on the bus side. Next slide, please. Keeping along on conventional bus service in terms of our bus availability, the fleet availability, our maintenance team has done a great job in terms of making sure that we have the right number of buses available each day. So this is our morning bus availability, meeting and exceeding all our requirements for bus service in the morning. And then if you go to the next slide, please, the afternoon is basically the same thing. We're seeing a very much, where every day we're meeting and exceeding the required number of buses. And that's continued on since for both AM and PM since March. So we're really pleased with the work that our teams have done to get that bus availability back to where we want it to be. Moving on to the next slide, please. With regards to customer complaints, just a bit of a recap. The gray line, the gray bars there is 2021, and the dark black ones are 2022. We are seeing a reduction in the number of complaints per 100,000 bus and train customer trips compared to the same time period last year. But if you look back to 2021, we're actually been fairly consistent since September, October of last year into this year in terms of number of complaints. So, we're static there, but it's something that we obviously really need to watch closely, especially given the increase in cancellations with regards to on the bus side of things. So we'll be watching that closely, and we'll continue to obviously report on this metric moving forward. I'll move on to the next slide. I'll talk quickly about ridership on both the O train and the conventional buses. We are seeing an increase over 2021 each month. So far this year, it is a higher amount of ridership than the previous year. And although you look at the chart here, and we are seeing a month-over-month increase, it is hard to draw some conclusions and trending at this time. Really, like we do see that April is up from January with 3.8 million rides or trips compared to 3.2 in January. But with the truck occupation, likely we saw a bit of a compression or a reduction in ridership possibly in February, and then in March we had the no charge transit, the downtown routes and the O train in March of that month. So that probably has an impact to a certain degree. There's obviously lots of variables, but had a bit of an impact. But the main thing here is that we are our numbers are above 2021 numbers, and we are seeing we are seeing an upward trend. But it's based on the 4 months in 2022, it's hard to make a direct correlation because of the variables, and as I said, with regards to the truck occupation and the no charge transit. If I can move to the next slide. The next slide is O train and conventional bus fare revenue. Very similar to the previous slide. We are seeing increases month over month compared to last year, and we are seeing an increase from the beginning of the year, where it was 7 million and up to 8.4 in April. And then February and March likely impacted as well, once again by the truck occupation in February, and then the no charge transit in March. So, but overall, increase from 2021, but hard to make some direct correlations at this time. We need to see a little bit more data in terms of both ridership and bus fare revenue. And that's it for the updates. I'll turn it back over to Madame Amilcar at this point, and if there are any questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Troy. So, Chair, if you don't mind, we're ready now to answer 2 questions that people may have for this part.
Okay. First up from the Commission will be Commissioner Brockington, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. And Madame Amilcar, thank you and your staff. Excellent, thorough presentation. And I'm glad to hear you're excited to come to Transit Commission. Excellent. And I love the design behind you. I don't want to focus my attention on that, but whatever that is, I like it. It looks like a railway crossing. It looks very nice. I just have 2 questions today. Both were raised at our last meeting, and I just want to get a little more information if I can. Thank you for looking into the statistics about road volumes, traffic on our roads. I'm glad to know that you looked into that, and it's actually quite high. I think you referenced 82% in Q1. Our traffic volumes are at much higher than transit. Are you able to understand what that data means? People are obviously returning to their cars at a much faster or higher rate than public transit. Is OC Transpo trying to dig into that number and understand why that is the case?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. I don't have the real reason, but for sure that I think people prefer to take their car now because there is less traffic, even if it's 82%, it's less than 2019 anyway. And because of the remotely work too, probably people can go out with their car and they are not very struggling in the traffic, so they don't have to pay attention if they will be late or not. So I think that probably I can explain that like that. But with the outreach we did, we will know better exactly what is the new trend of our customers. So probably for the next meeting, I will be able to better focus on that particular point of your needs.
Yeah, very valuable information is to try and understand what brings people to OC Transpo. Why do people leave, right? but more importantly, why do they come? Or as importantly, why do people substitute taking public transit for private vehicle? And if the private vehicle usage volumes are at a much higher rate than our own ridership, I think that's very valuable information to have and to understand. My other question, Chair, is regarding the two large cohorts who have traditionally used OC Transpo, and that, of course, again, are the federal public servants and the post-secondary education students. Has OC Transpo been able to better understand this data, data volumes? Where are we now compared to pre-COVID with these particular cohorts, and what the long-term trends look like for them coming back to service? What do we know at this point?
Thank you, Councillor and Chair. Yeah, and next month for sure we'll have those answers. I hope so. And I can ask Pat if he can help me now. But what I can say, I met 2 or 3 weeks ago Jacques Fremont, is director of the U Ottawa. I was on the forum with all the CEOs in Ottawa with him, and he said that students will come back full time, so which is very good for us. So this is a good news, and I was very happy to share that with my team. So maybe Pat, you can add something, and for sure, Councillor Brockington will have more information next month. Sorry.
Thanks, Renee. No, that's the main thing. We can know in advance more from the university administration what their plans are with the office workers downtown and the office workers all across the city, many of whom are working for the federal government. We're in a much more wait and see kind of position because we don't have there isn't the single contact that represents all office workers, and there isn't the same level of direction as there is for students on where that will occur. There's more individual choice among office workers. We'll continue to collect information and continue to report it as we receive it.
Yeah, it's of course a huge revenue loss for the commission, and you know, whatever data that the commission can get to better inform our decision making. That's where I'm going with that question. My last is just on rush hour demands for service. Do we still have higher peaks? I know the service is more or less better spread out throughout the day since COVID happened, but do we still have a morning peak demand and afternoon peak demand?
Yes, definitively.
Okay,
yes.
And are you able for a future Transit Commission meeting to present? Troy talked about service delivery performance across the day. I'd like to see, in addition, a second slide that looks at morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour to ensure that our service during these peak periods is consistently high. Are you able to provide the commission with that as well?
I think yes, Councillor. So we'll do for the next meeting.
That would be great. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Next up is Commissioner Wright-Gilbert, please.
Good morning, everyone. I too am happy that Madame Amilcar is excited to come to Transit Commission. That is perfect. I think that's what we want to hear for sure. So I want to talk a little bit more about this issue with the number of bus operators that we have available to us. I appreciate the information you provided in the presentation. I just want to delve into it a little bit deeper because I think this is an issue that needs a little bit more attention. Do we know how many bus operators are retiring or planning to retire in the 2022-2023 fiscal year?
If you don't mind, I will answer in French, so it will be so easy for me. Alors, je parle en français.
Well, yes, Commissioner Gilbert, Councillor Gilbert, rather. We know every month there are between 7 and 10 drivers who are going to retire. So that's part of our planning. when it comes to recruit and train people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that seems like a lot, but I know we have a large number of operators, so I suppose it's a small percentage. So, I mean, I think we all saw the article about driver shortages in the media this past week, where Union President Mr. Crabtree was commenting on some of the difficulties the drivers are facing as a result of sort of this new scheduling system. I have heard directly from multiple drivers who have contacted me to give me sort of their perspective. And I don't think we can ignore the driver's perspective on all of this. So from what I understand, the drivers with seniority who previously, as a result of their seniority and working for us for a long time, they previously didn't have to work weekends and statutory holidays, are now being forced to work weekends and statutory holidays, including Canada Day. And I'm sure we can all appreciate that would have an impact on morale. If you hadn't had to work weekends and statutory holidays for years because you earned it because you had seniority, and now you're being forced to, what are you hearing about morale, and what is being done to ensure that we keep these operators? I mean, if they're really unhappy, as part of the Great Resignation, I'm concerned that they are going to just leave us and we'll really be in a pickle.
Merci, commissionnaire. Alors,
personally, I am very affected by what is going through the personnel, the staff, because it's a huge change. But I remind us that it is a law, and OC Transpo has to abide by the law. And this is why we're working with the union and the drivers also. And what you don't know, perhaps, is that we had to bring these modifications in the middle of December. Once again, some of the drivers have told us, could you at least, please do not do these changes until April. And we listened to them. We listened to our employees. And so we transferred this to the next part, which was in April. So yes, there were people who had seniority who now have to work 2 weekends a month, which is a lot. And that's why the solution is going to happen with the arrival of new operators, because the new ones, they probably don't want to work weekends either, but they don't have seniority. So at the beginning, that's where they will be assigned, and that will allow our more senior operators to once again find their weekends, but not all at once, unfortunately, because of the act is mandatory. But there are some positive aspects to it, because most of the employees that I've talked to are not happy, but a lot of them actually are, because every 5 hours they have a 30-minute pause to go to the bathroom, to eat, whatever. So that's positive. And it's also very positive for security, for the employees themselves and for other people, of course, which is very important.
Thank you, Madame Amilcar. Just in case anybody's wondering, there's a break between when Madame Amilcar finishes speaking and when I start speaking. It's because I'm listening to the interpreter, because even though I'm taking French lessons, I'm not quite there yet. So thank you for that. Now, you mentioned the law, and it's federal law about the half-hour break. However, it's my understanding that OC Transpo had 2 years to implement this law. You were given a 2-year delay. All transit operations were a 2-year delay. And so we've had 2 years to plan for this. So I'm wondering, why is it going so badly with the drivers, right? Like, I get it. Some drivers are happy. They got a half-hour break. That's amazing. But if it were me, if I were an operator and I was told, sure, you have seniority, you've been working with us for years and years and years and years, and thanks for that. However, you're now forced to work 2 weekends a month and you've got to work statutory holidays. I know you haven't done it for the last several years, but that's just how it is. That, quite honestly, if it were me, I would immediately start looking for a new job. Because that's just not, I mean, their seniority means nothing now. So I'm wondering, why did we wait until the last minute to implement this, if this is the law? I know we had 2 years to implement, but it doesn't mean we have to wait 2 years.
Commissaire, effectivement.
Yes, you are correct. The government had advised us that potentially this was going to happen, but the date was never given. So what the Act said is that it's coming and we'll tell you when it's happening. And OC Transpo had already announced with the information, that information to the union executive, and some work was done with my planning team and the union reps. We have to understand here that that 30-minute break, ideally, it should be taken in a safe place where you can have a bite to eat, go to the bathroom, etc. So there was a lot of logistics involved, and there were a lot of discussions with our partners about all this. Unfortunately, at the end of last fall, when we found out that the Act was actually going to be applied, that's when we realized that we had no choice but to implement it. But what I can tell you, that had we not really used those public funds, we would have taken if we had not had available, had we had the money available, we would have hired those 80 people and while but we couldn't have done it, because if you remember, in June 2021, the Transport Commission had decided to reduce service on less used routes in order to fit with our budget. I wasn't there at the time, but I might have taken the same decision. But it would have been awful to proactively hire operators when we knew that we had to re-look at the whole service because of the budget. But that being said, this is why I did my mea culpa a little while ago. We have to apply the law. I know it's inconvenient. We're going to work really hard with our partners and on our staff and our employees to reduce the consequences and the negative effects on them.
Okay, I'm going to leave that issue aside, but I will say this. This commission has been hearing about this incoming federal law regarding a mandated 30-minute break for at least 2 years. So your predecessor, John Manconi, would update us on it pretty much every month, or at least every other month for at least 2 years. So it's not a surprise. I will accept your explanation that you only found out about the mandatory implementation in the fall, though I will say that that seems odd, just knowing how the federal government typically works with implementation of big changes, but I will accept your explanation on that. Here's one of my other concerns. I will be coming back around for another set of questions, but I wanted to focus on the drivers for my first set, because I think the operators, I think that's incredibly important. And just for clarity, we're talking about bus operators. So on the slide regarding increasing bus service delivery, you note amongst the list of things that you're going to be doing to increase bus service delivery is that you're going to be minimizing leave time. Can you provide specifics on how you're going to do that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, can you say your question again?
Yes, sorry.
The interpretation, sorry.
Yeah, I speak really fast, sorry. So on the slide regarding increasing bus service delivery, amongst the list of things that you've noted that you're going to be doing, you mentioned minimizing leave time. Can you please provide specifics on how you are going to minimize leave time of our operators who already have extremely low morale?
Merci. Au fait, ce qu'on dit, c'est que, bon, c'est sûr que...
What we're saying is that we are trying as much as possible to work with our people. And for the summertime, we're going to give more vacation time so that the employees can profit, take advantage of the nice weather. And then they come back nice and fresh and relaxed for the fall. And where we can, we'll do it. But normally people should be able to take their vacations normally. We're certainly not going to stop them from taking their vacations, but we'll try to minimize the whole thing in order to get extra operators so that we can minimize the impact that it would have on the service.
So, okay. that was a bit of a roundabout answer, and I get it. It's a sticky issue. You've got to work with the unions. Here's the thing, though. To me, it sounds like what you're saying is you are essentially asking operators to take their vacation within a summer months when services, there's less customers, although we don't have that many to begin with, but there are less customers, so that there are more drivers available during the fall and winter months when school's back in session and those types of things. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Thank you, Commissioner. Jim, are you here? Can you give a right answer to the Commissioner, please? Give an example as we discussed.
Sure. I think what you're referencing, Councillor, is correct. We are asking, or over a period of a year, we have a certain amount of vacation hours, and I'm actually trying to get that from our booking department. So there's an annual set amount of hours based on the seniority of each individual operator. And what we're looking to do is to try and find that balance of trying to have more operators have the ability. Each booking, we book 4 times a year. So every booking, we set a certain amount of allotment for vacation hours to be taken. So this year and this summer, we've actually increased the amount of available vacation weeks for each operator to take, which will actually provide more operators available in September. But it's trying to find that balance between services down, trying to ride the wave of service ridership coming up, because it could go either way. But this year, we recognize it's been a tough year for everyone, and I've asked our booking team to increase the amount of vacation allotments that can be taken and selected by seniority for the summer booking for June. So in September, we'll have less vacation, but it'll provide more operators. But at least they can take the vacation to find that work-life balance and quality time during the summer, when most operators would like to have that.
Okay. I see what you're doing. And from a managerial perspective, I understand it. Here's my issue with it, and it's just food for thought, Mr. Greer and Madame Amilcar. You have drivers, you have operators who are already, pardon my language, pissed off. I mean, quite honestly, the messages I'm getting are, I'm not going to repeat them, but they are, they're spicy in terms of how your operators are feeling. So you've already got low morale amongst your operators. And now, even though I understand your intentions and from a managerial perspective, it makes sense. I get that. But from an operator perspective, you're messing with their vacation. You're saying in a public meeting that you're going to, quote, minimize leave time. Minimize leave time is an amazing corporate phrase, but when you hear it as an operator, alarm bells will go off, which is why I asked you about it. And so as an employee, alarm bells are going to go off. My alarm bells went off. If my boss said to me, okay, so we got a lot going on, we need to minimize leave time, so we'll give you more a time in the summer to take your vacations, but there's not going to be as much time available in, say, the fall or the winter for vacation then. That's a limitation. You're limiting them on when they can take vacation. I understand operational readiness and operational needs. I understand it from a management perspective. I deal with it every day in my quote unquote real life, my real job. I want you to give some thought to how you position this. Minimizing leave time, I'm just going to say it, not a fantastic phrase. It's going to set off alarm bells with your union. And number 2, I really think that you guys need to do some serious outreach to your operators, because the messages I am getting are full of vitriol and are full of anger. And I think they are representative of a large swath of your operators. And I am concerned that we are going to have a great resignation amongst our operators. And then the people who are going to get, messed over on this are our customers. So we need to sort of think about it in that. I will leave that aside. My last question, and then I'm going to let my colleagues go and I'll go for a second round. You mentioned that you're going to you have permission to hire, as a result of the 2022 budget, 80 operators, but in reality, you need up to 300, which was something that was noted by Mr. Crabtree in the article. This is the first time we're hearing that up to 300 operators are going to be needed. I believe, I could be wrong. Are you going to need to return to council for permission to hire the additional operators over and above the 80 that you have permission for now?
Merci pour votre question, commissionnaire. Au fait, les 80 dont on a parlé, c'était relié
those 80
c'était relié
that
au,
we talked about. Those 80 that you talked about were for the CLC, and all positions have already been granted by the council. So whether it's attrition, so people, let's say retired, or they got another job. So that means the post is vacant. So all we're doing is replacing that person, or it might also be people who are just retiring. And it might be for the opening of the Trillium line. So we have to prepare that, because once the Trillium line is open, we need all the operators. So there might be people who are drivers now, and they're going to become train operators instead.
Okay, I quite honestly, I didn't get most of that answer. Here's the thing. So here's what I'm understanding. 80 operators were approved. The hiring of 80 additional operators was approved in the 2022 budget. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
For the CLC.
For the CLC, yes.
CLC.
What is that? Oh, that. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the additional up to 300 additional operators, those are being hired to backfill the positions of people leaving, people retiring, people moving on to other parts of the organization, correct?
Correct.
So how does that solve our problem that was noted by Mr. Crabtree then, that it's actually needing an additional 200 operators to actually, because we have shortages now with our numbers. So I'm not sure how the additional 300 actually solves our problem.
Okay. Donc, je recommence. Pour l'instant, le fait d'avoir...
Right now, the very fact that we have set up, that we have implemented the Canadian Labor Code, that meant that the way that the schedules have been redone, it means that we need 80 people more. Those 80 operators, when we get them, that won't affect the schedules anymore, and we won't have any more shortages when it comes to drivers. But over months, as people take their retirement or take training, that means that they're not working anymore, or they go to another department, so we're still missing people, those are positions that are being left vacant. But when people leave permanently, okay, whether they're taking a retirement or they're taking a permanent job somewhere else within the city, then the position rather, is going to be vacant, and then we have to replace that person. So 200 is not 200 right now. We anticipate that up until the Trillium line opening, we're going to hire 200 people more. And that includes within there people who are retiring in December, and I don't need them right now, but I have to plan for them. This is why we did this big planning and recruitment campaign, because we know that in the next few months, we're going to be needing people, and we don't want to be in the situation we're in right now, which is, wow, all of a sudden, overnight, we need 80 people extra. But normally, little by little, we know we can plan what happens. And so bus will talk to train and say, okay, I'm going to need 20 people. And then the bus will talk to the recruitment team. And then the recruitment people will talk to the people who are in charge of training. And then until we get everybody up and ready for either the train or the bus.
Okay, I'm going to let my other, I've gone on for quite a long time, and I think I've been given some leeway, and I appreciate that from the chair and the commission coordinator. I'm going to let my other colleagues ask some questions. I'm going to come back around for a second go, just fair warning. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Councillor Curry, please.
Thank you, Chair Hubley. So I wanted to start by thanking Renee and her team who came to the Canada North Transportation Committee meeting and spoke with Community Association presidents and answered all their questions, and they had many, and they were so pleased that you came and so happy to get all the information that they've been wondering about for months. So I really want to thank you for taking that time, because that makes a big difference when people have the facts and they understand what's going on. So thank you to all of you who came. The other thing I wanted to say was that since that time, I've sent a number of emails to Pat Scrimgeour, and the service has been fabulous to people in Canada who've had issues with busing. And there was an issue with Paratranspo that, you know, immediately they got response, and this person that was in quite a lot of distress was helped immediately. I just want to say that the service has been fabulous. As a new councillor, I am so thrilled to know that if I send an email on behalf of a resident, that there is instant response. So I really want to thank you for that, and on behalf of residents. The other thing I will say is that one of the emails I've had recently has been from a high-tech worker, and just in terms of the power of one email. And, you know, Councillor Brockington often talks about the, you know, students and federal government employees, and we need to understand the numbers of who's riding, who isn't. And I would say the other being the Canada North Tech Park. There's 540 companies out there, and they certainly rely on transit as well. And the question I had from one employee was, you know, what can be done about the service to the Canada Tech Park? You know, we don't have the bus rapid transit yet, and, you know, the internal bus routes may not be back up to what they are expecting. So in an email to Pat Scrimgeour, we talked about, can we get more data from the 540 companies? And so to that end, I went to the Canada North Business Association, and they were saying, and there was a representative from Ericsson there, and said, absolutely, we're happy to get that data. Who's going back to work? What are the companies doing in terms of whether it's 20%, 40%? What are they mandating people back to work? How's that going? So that then triggered now potentially a new survey of the companies out there. So I thought that's amazing that we can, you know, even from one email about bus service, work towards additional data that I think will be very helpful. So I did want to comment on that. And the other is that at that meeting, and from Councillor Hubley's comments on the radio, which people have been writing to me about, are so thankful for, that there may be more of a focus on internal bus routes, because, you know, we don't have the LRT certainly running everywhere. And I just wonder, what is the process for determining how we would add more buses? And part of it's because I'm new, but I know that I'm asking on behalf of residents as well, because when Councillor Hubley has made those comments on the radio, and same with you, Renee, when you came to that meeting, people were thrilled to hear that. So I just wonder, how does that actually take place, so that I can go back and help people understand that?
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your kind words. It's very, very helpful, and I'm sure that my staff will appreciate. I have Pat here. So Pat is my guru on the planning. So Pat, can you try to help Councillor Curry, please?
Thanks, Renee. Mr. Chair, we'd be happy to work with any councillor who's got community input to change services in their area, short-term or long-term. You'll remember we made quite a number of changes in the summer of 2021 in response to things we'd heard from councillors in all parts of the city. We made improvements to crosstown services. We made improvements in downtown routes. We made improvements in Orleans, Barrhaven, lots and lots of areas, and right here where we're sitting in Alta Vista Ward. We're in discussion with 3 of the downtown councillors and possible changes, improvements that we could make in that area. We recently made changes in Stittsville that just came into effect a few weeks ago in response to community discussions there. So it's an ongoing process, you know, largely driven by what are our customers' travel needs. Now that will also feed into the major review that we have to do for each sector of the city over the next, let's say, 3 years, as different O-Train extensions come online, that we will have to restructure the bus route network in the south, in the east, and then in the west and southwest just as we did when Line 1 opened in 2019. So that's a major part of our work with all of the councillors representing those areas over the years to come. But anything, anytime.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. That's good to know. And I will follow up with you on the Canada North Tech Park and Jamie Petton, who's very keen to help gather more and more data that could really, I think, change the game for us understanding who's doing what, going back to work or not. But anyway, thank you again very much for all of your help.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. I wonder, Pat, I'm not sure Councillor Curry has that memo that had the list of route changes that you spoke of that we implemented last year, one of which was the Route 110 was created. Could you forward that memo to her so that she'll see the changes that we've already started to make?
I certainly will. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Must have been just before my time, but that'd be super helpful.
It was Councillor Curry, and I just as soon as you started talking about it, I started thinking about that memo. That maybe that would help you if you had that insight. The rest of the commission have it.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So next up is Councillor Gower, please.
Thanks, Chair. Pat mentioned in his previous response to Councillor Curry the route changes in Stittsville that were recently implemented. And it reminded me about an email that I received a few days after those were implemented. Route 67, which used to just go to Terry Fox and require a transfer to get downtown. It was changed so that the routes during peak hours go directly to Tunney's Pasture. And I think it's worth sharing this comment from a resident who uses the route. He wrote to me and said, the direct route to and from Tunney's Pasture during peak commute periods will help eliminate our family's need for a second car. So really encouraging to get that kind of feedback. We also implemented last summer some extended weekend service to Route 62 in the Stittsville community, and OC Transport did a ridership survey shortly after that was implemented and found an additional 100 customer trips over the Saturday and Sunday from just 2 neighborhoods in Stittsville. So I think that clearly shows there is a demand for OC Transport service, and I appreciate staff's assistance to address these customer needs. But I really wanted to focus in today on 2 things. One was on the cancellations, because we are seeing on a daily basis cancellations to routes that serve Stittsville and other communities. I'm glad to see from staff some of the proactive work being done to address the operator shortages. But what I wanted to better understand was what kind of timeline we should expect before we're going to see improvements. Are we talking weeks before we see a real change, or are we talking months? I'm trying to get some more context around when those solutions or when the actions will result in some meaningful difference for customers.
Merci, Conseiller Gower, pour vos bons mots aussi.
Thank you, Councillor, for your good words. We always appreciate positive comments. This changes day after day. We're still going on with our campaign. We have a cohort of students that will graduate at the end of June, and that will come in. So it will evolve. Unfortunately, it's happening at the same time as the summer holidays. And as Jim Greal said, we have less people in the summer because there's a lot of holiday time in the summer. So that affects the balance. Also, there will be people retiring. So we're trying to retain them, but if it's not possible, they have to leave. So we anticipate that it will be a small challenge this summer. But for September, we're quite confident the way we will provide the service, and we've accepted the request for accepting more students. So in September, we will be in a much better position than we are now. So it will be still a few more months before we have improvements, right? Thank you for this information.
I would also like to ask a question about implementation of the council motion to provide transit passes to refugees from Ukraine and other displaced persons from around the world. when I understand that hasn't been implemented yet, or passes aren't available. Can we get an update on when people would be able to obtain those passes?
Oui, Pat va vous donner un petit...
Yes, Pat will give you a small update, but it's not far from my office, so I can sign off and we can go forward with this. So Pat?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd say we're hours away from beginning to distribute them. All of the technical steps are in place. All of the distribution plant channels are in place. All of the information is ready to share publicly beyond the agencies involved. And now all of the required administrative paperwork has been completed. So we're very, very close. We hope to be putting out that information possibly as early as this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Next up is Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Renee and your team for great presentation. Lots of information. I really appreciate the focus on answering the questions that were put forward. And the one I had put forward was about the third-party apps and buses. It said your response is it could be added at future, but future is a big hole. What are we talking about in terms of time period that we can get better app service?
We're okay. I think we've spoken of this at previous meetings that the biggest current change is the continuing move of buses from the very fragile legacy system over to the new system, and that's been going on through this year and is continuing to go. The steps beyond that are, as I outlined earlier, are ones that will we haven't mapped out completely and don't know quite yet which way we're going, but the current thing is to get more of the buses over onto the new dispatch system.
Okay, so it's as we get new buses on.
As we convert the buses are all connected by cellular radio to the system. About half of the buses have been moved over to the new system. About half of the buses are still on the old system, and that changeover is continuous. But we did lose some time because we were not, we took a cautious step to not make that change and move buses over from one system to another while we were going through the difficult operations that we had back in January, February with the truck protests downtown.
Okay, thank you. I apologize that I keep asking, but I look forward to when we get there. It was interesting to see the fare data that were dropping a little bit on passes, but raised slightly on single ride fares. And even though that's only 1/4 roughly of the ridership, are we seeing a pattern here? I mean, this kind of fits in with people doing the hybrid thing. If they're just taking tickets and they're not buying passes anymore, what do we see this as a trend?
It certainly is consistent with what you're talking about. It's consistent with people traveling for work less frequently, but things have been changing so often, so frequently, and more than one thing changing at the same time that we haven't seen a pattern yet. We can just see and speculate as you can on what's behind this. It is remarkable, though, I think, that we're still at 72% of our trips being made by pass holders. And that shows that at least at this point and all through the pandemic, the transit system continues to be used heavily by the people who rely on it pretty much every day.
Thank you. And speaking of people who rely on it every day, the Equipass and community passes what are we doing to promote them, to get more people using them? Do we have any stats on how many people who qualify for them are actually reaching out and getting them?
We have that discussion continuously with community agency, community partners, and our colleagues in community and support services department. It's ongoing work. I think I talked last meeting, possibly 3 meetings ago, about the work we're doing with OCH to basically go into the OCH buildings and do customer service clinics where we can help people to know what their options are, apply, if at all possible, get their approvals done right there at the table. So we're working with them all the time. We've got big increases on how many people are applying, how many people know about it, and when we get the numbers tabulated together on this work, and it's not a one-time project, it's continuous work, but we'll be able to give you snapshots along the way of how people who can qualify for all the different discounted passes that you offer them, not just those two, but all of them. But of course, it depends on each individual's need, whether they do need to travel, how frequently they need to travel, what their own personal situation is, on which of the options is best for them.
I appreciate it, and I think there's a lot of people who still are not familiar with them and don't realize the value of them. So I appreciate going into OCH, and I'm from OCH's end, being on the board, I'm encouraging that big time. So I think it's a great partnership, and I hope to see it continue. In terms of drivers, in terms of the shortage, we've heard about morale problems. I'm wondering, because it just seemed like a few years ago we were talking about laying them off, was a few years ago, and that luckily didn't happen. But in terms of job security, what is the job security? Because we're going to be switching over to trains, and obviously that's a few years away as I look at the construction. But is that a concern as well, that it may not be as long-term, though some of them, as has been said, will be trained to run the trains as well. But is that one of the issues that comes up?
Commissioner, si j'ai bien compris votre question,
well, if I understood the question is, do we have difficulty attracting drivers because we think that the opening of the extension, will we have problems recruiting? Well, this is why our planning is long-term. We're trying to see how many people we will need to provide the service today. But with the retirements and attrition, it's a bit of a challenge for us to get the right level. We don't want to have to fire anyone because we have too much staff. So for now, we want to keep our people for now. There's no short-term worries because we'll open the East in 2024 and the West in 24-25. So we will have a much more detailed planning later in 2023-24. We will start looking in a very more focused way. Thank you.
Switch over to routes. There's a couple of issues that keep coming up over and over again, and I know, Pat, you're familiar with this. We just reporting what we hear, and then frankly, it's quieted down because lower ridership. But the concerns that are in certain areas are constant, and one of them is the Britannia 51, where they are neglecting to go into the village, doing that extra loop, and that's what appears to happen, and that's problematic in the morning. I realize the pressure in the morning is the peak, but that's a time for kids to get on the bus, and it's a time for people to get to work. And we've had several reports of that. So is that being looked into?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's a particular route that our control and supervisory staff who manage the service every day, they're always watching in particular that area, because we know there had been some problems earlier. My information is that it's quite a bit better recently than it had been, sort of tail end of the winter. So it's a known piece of work that they are watching every day, and I think generally speaking, that service has been running quite reliably over the last few weeks.
Okay, well, I always hope that, and
any particular instances we'll be happy to look into.
Okay, I appreciate your for that. The other one is going west, and that's the 6162 to Stittsville. I'm happy to hear from my colleagues that the routes are getting improved out that way, but we have a constant complaint about the service there.
Well, I know there's a lot of confusion for customers as we went through those 2 detour changes for stage 2 construction at Pinecrest Station, one on the 26th of April, and then another one, I think, on the 1st of May, only a week later. And that, made it hard for people to know without checking where exactly they were going to be dropped off or where they needed to go to be picked up. The changes that Councillor Gower was talking about on Route 62 came into effect last summer. That was mostly weekend service in Stittsville, so weekend service beyond Kanata North to Stittsville, but there were also some improvements, Councillor Kavanagh, through your ward to Stittsville, to Kanata and on to Stittsville made at that time. Again, if there's particular improvements at particular places we can turn our attention to, we're very happy to know more about them.
Yes, we keep in touch regularly with your customer service on that particular one. Anyway, I appreciate all the effort that's being made for the low-income passes. We think in terms of passes being a full fare, but I appreciate that we're reaching out and looking at those as well, and promoting them hard. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor McKenney, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Renee and team, for the update. It is, as you said, Renee, and I appreciate, looking at trends and understanding those trends and being able to pull apart the data so that we have more specifics in terms of what is creating an increase in ridership. Certain times of day, certainly certain types of ridership based on passes versus single ride fares is all quite helpful. I think we can all probably agree that we're never going to go back to 2019 where we have a full workforce coming in and out of the downtown, but we do have opportunities certainly to get people around in transit in their own neighborhoods and their own communities, and it's the type of neighborhoods we're trying to plan, and the type of communities that people want to to be able to take a bus to a library in Councillor Curry's ward, or to get across the Queensway into Kanata South, for example. So I think that, looking forward at, what are the trends and what are those barriers to increase ridership is critical. And just on reliability, I'm not going to, I appreciate the information that you've shared on shortage of drivers. But I just want to ask about, just have actually two quick questions, and they're on availability of extra, like spare buses. And when we have cancellations, they certainly must frequently or regularly at least be due to you know, a lack of available buses to go out on that shift. Do we have that data in terms of what our capacity is and how many extra spare buses are available in the fleet at any given time to meet the demand?
Merci, conseillère McKinney. Je vois que mon collègue Jim est là aussi.
I see that my colleague Jim is there. He can complete my answer. Yes, we have this information. We don't have a problem with bus availability right now. The issue right now is with the operators. Unfortunately, if we don't have any drivers, we can't offer the service. But in the peak hours, morning and afternoon, we do have data. And I do receive information twice a day, actually, about this. So to see what happened during the peak in the morning, what happened in the peak in the afternoon. So if you have questions on that, I'll be pleased to provide them to you. But we saw with what Troy presented, we can see the availability. That's why we put it in for the morning and for the afternoon, because sometimes in the morning we see less buses than in the afternoon. But so if you have a more focused request than what we saw on the screen, we can provide it to you.
Yeah, not so much more focused, just overall, just trying to understand the, you know, we're just, you know, recently learning that there's a shortage of drivers. I just want to make sure that we understand all of the factors that are involved in route cancellations. And so that was my question then on, so for buses, the fleet is full. We have the capacity, we have the extra fleet capacity to put buses out, you know, in the AM peak, the PM peak. Even when some are down, obviously we have a certain number down for maintenance then.
Oui, merci, conseillère. Donc, Chair, oui, on a le breakdown de...
So, yes, we have the breakdown of cancellations. That is also an information I can change. Of course, it happens every day. I can share, of course it happens every day. A cancellation can happen because the route is not available and nobody informed us. You know, stuff happens. It's not because we have not enough drivers or buses. These things happen on a daily basis as well.
Okay, I appreciate that, and look forward to just some extra information on it, but I'll be watching on your updates. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And so now we'll go to Councillor Fleury, please.
Thank you, Chair. Bonjour, René. Moi aussi, je suis d'accord. La présentation.
Hi, Renee. Thank you very much. I really like this very relevant and useful presentation. I want to come back to some of the issues and some of the points that have to do with cancellation. And what we notice, generally speaking, is that we are able to satisfy the on-time requirement to about 80%, depending on oscillation and sites. But I'm wondering, what is the strategy for routes that are less frequented? So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. If we cancel a bus, or if the bus is always late on a frequent route, then the time waiting is less, spent time waiting is less, but it's also a problem if the bus is too full. But on the other side, if a bus comes by less often, but it's not on time or it's canceled, that also has consequences, because we talked about this a while ago, you and I. If the bus is canceled, it could be an hour if the other one is sent out. So can you clarify what is the strategy that you have in order to be able to manage both of those challenges? Because if we just look at this through stats, we see that we're about 80%, but 20% of the routes are less frequented, and that can create problems. Thank you, Conseiller Fleury. So we're at 96%, actually, if you don't mind me correcting you. So that's 8,000 hours that we're using per day. And I think 96 is a good percent. Of course, we want absolute excellence, naturally. When situations such as the one you've described arise, this is when we use this is when we have magics that the people at the OC Transpo manage this. They're going to anticipate which line absolutely has to be replaced if we're in a shortage situation, precisely to avoid all of those who are 20 or 30 minutes apart are not cut. Of course, it can happen spontaneously that this occurs, but normally speaking, the more the control center is informed because the driver couldn't come in because of whatever and they've been warned in advance, then the control center people are going to analyze the situation and they'll take whatever spares they have. They will be sent out to those places in order to limit the waiting time for the people who are waiting for service. Well, I appreciate this clarification. I'm referring to the performance report, and I reread some of the factors that you mentioned. And I'm on page 27 of a chart that says monthly on-time performance, less frequent routes. And when you look at that, I'm talking about the on-time performance here. It's 80%. I'm not talking about the availability of the vehicles in this context. So I'm still asking myself, it's the same question really. How do you decide what to prioritize when there is a delay or a cancellation on a well-frequented route? I understand that the control people and Troy's team is doing whatever magic it can to replace everything at the last minute. But if we have one bus and there's two let's say delays and one cancellation, what do you do with that? If you have question on the statistic, I don't want to. I don't want us to, to disagree, but it is on page 27 of the report, the 80%. I think what you're probably referring to is the performance report of 2021, which we set aside. And I think Councillor Brockington has probably a question about that, and we can answer that my mistake a while ago when I talked about the 96%, I meant the delivery, but you are being specific here. You are talking about the actual adherence to the schedule. So these are two different measures, really. So for buses that are 15 minutes and less, and we measure the punctuality as to the frequency of the buses, and that's separated. But anything that is beyond 15 minutes, sort of those long ones for 30 minutes apart, that we're also talking about the punctuality, which we separate. And you're right, I don't have the report in front of me, but if you read it, okay, that's what it is. And we can give you more information, or when we're in the middle of that document, maybe we can give you more information. But to be specific as to your question, we are trying as much as possible not to not to affect those frequencies route, we try to manage in as much as possible the routes that are less frequented in order to limit the waiting time between buses. Okay, well, I'm going to continue. Now, another element which interests me is the client experience. And we can see that we have a 311 call center. I see that what the waiting times, I think they're somewhat worrisome. I'm wondering if there is a targeted waiting time for a person calling. And the people who call maybe cannot do so otherwise. Like, for instance, they can't do reservations online, and even your team is more and more available and on social media as well. This might reduce some of the needs of the call center, but could you be clear as to the kind of targets that you would like to have for answering those at the call centers? Could you comment on that, the waiting times on the calls? Yes, totally. That is actually part of our priorities. For some time now, we have shared with you performance indicators. And the next step is to give you a threshold, a tolerance threshold, you know, like a range. So what would be the maximum time, minimum time, and we'll try and find something in between. And to answer, for instance, okay, let's say a client for Paratranspo calls in order to be able to reserve a spot the following day. And we'll see it in the next presentation. We have all those statistics. We're doing quite well. And a couple of days ago, we talked to our teams and we said we have to give ourselves a threshold in order to be able to manage expectations and waiting times. Because if many more people will talk to you, it's going to cost, you know, hugely. And then it's the same budget. So we could be in a sufferance position. At OC Transpo, now when it comes to waiting or to try and reserve for the next day your Paratranspo spot, I think the waiting times are actually really good. If I compare to my ex-life, you know, since I've only been here for 7 months, but so let's say 12 to 15 minutes, but we're underneath 7 minutes. So that's pretty good. Now, when our client is on the street and the service hasn't arrived yet, the vehicle has not arrived to pick him up, that's less than 2 minutes because we know that the person has to be taken immediately. Now, when it comes to normal service, regular service, we don't have specific information, but we take it for granted that the person is calling, it's not for a reservation, and it's not for an immediate answer because it's not Paratranspo or timely transport for a person or a specific person. We'll see then the waiting times for regular questions are a little bit longer. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to try and reduce them. So our next phase will be, like, let's say, look at our goal, because we have to also respect the budget that we have, and we have to work within that. And what are the thresholds that we can reach within that budget in order to try and meet our goals? Okay. Oh, great. I appreciate this very detailed response. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, I mean.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, so now up is Commissioner Wright-Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to return back to the driver issue, the operator issue again. I wasn't going to. However, in the intervening time between when I first asked my first round of questions and now, I have received messages from operators. And the message is this, so I thought I would pass it along. That if the changes to leave and minimizing leave are implemented, the drivers will revolt. That is a direct quote. I won't tell you who it's from, but I received it from several operators. So I'm going to say this to OC Transpo management and OC Transpo staff, but specifically OC Transpo management. I encourage you to engage with your operators, to engage with the union, but not just the union, but the operators themselves. We need to find a way to work this out that is, so that we have the best situation possible for our operators, but also the best situation possible for our customers. Because without operators, we have no way to get our customers around. To the operators who are watching this meeting right now, and I know you are because you messaged me, I'm going to say this. I encourage you to talk to your union. I encourage you to talk to OC Transpo management and make your feelings known, to make your thoughts known. If you are uncomfortable with that, I encourage you to email me directly, and I will anonymize the input and share it with OC Transpo management and with your union, because this is an issue that has bubbled up, and I don't think that we're on the other side of it, and it has potential for disaster within our transit system. I'm not trying to be dramatic here. The messages I am getting they're angry, and we've seen a bus strike. Most of us who've lived in this city, who are old enough, we've lived through a bus strike. I lived through the bus strike. I never want to live through that again. None of us do. So let's, an operator strike, let's try to work as much together to ensure that the operators don't feel as though they are getting the shaft. There's no other way to say that, and I apologize. It's not the most professional language. I'm going to leave that aside, but I do encourage operators to speak to OC Transpo management, to speak to their union. If you're not comfortable, you can email me directly. My email address is available on the City of Ottawa website under Transit Commission. Okay, I have a couple questions not related to operators. So thank you for providing, I think it was Mr. Charter. I could get this wrong, sorry. Mr. Charter, I think you provided me with information about the trains that are currently out of service for maintenance. I appreciate that. Just for transparency's sake, I did email you back and ask you a question with respect to the 2 trains that are in long-term maintenance that you spoke about during the presentation. And for transparency's sake, I just want to relay that your answer, my question to you was that were these trains in long-term maintenance as a result of the derailments? Your answer was yes. And so just to sort of add on to that question, what specific work is being done to these trains? What's required? What's wrong with them?
Commissioner, merci beaucoup pour votre question. Avant juste de passer la parole à Troy.
Thank you for that question. Before giving Troy the floor, I think it's important to get back to what Councillor Gilbert has just said about the bus drivers. First of all, I really want the Commission to understand that what we want is transparency. So I do not want us, okay, I don't want my information to be taken against us just because we're being generous with our information. When we say, look at all the different solutions that could be set up, that we're going to be increasing the number of drivers and reducing the impact on users, that doesn't mean that it's going to be done on their expense. And at the expense of their well-being. Absolutely not. That is not our intention at all. And I think I said this before, but it's clear that if there are volunteers, it's like when people leave for their retirement. If we can keep the person, yes, but of course, if they want to leave, they can retire, obviously. But obviously, if a driver who is temporarily in a specific position and this has an impact on the service that is given, we're not going to put them back. So I want to be clear about this. We're not doing things. We're not doing things any old way. We're doing things, we're making decisions for the well-being of employees, and also because we want to deliver a service to the users that they're entitled to have. The last thing I want to add, and of course I'm very happy to get emails, but I invite all our employees to talk to me personally and all of our staff. And I am multiplying all initiatives possible to be able to communicate with us on the shop floor by, I want to encourage people when it is necessary, especially when it's a little hot. I want to be present. I want them to have access to me personally. And I want to meet union. This week, we're going to be meeting with the union people. And several times, drivers have asked to meet me. I'm very happy to meet with them. I want to remind everybody here that we have forums to open communications, and I have a whole bunch of them. And I am always available for constructive discussions that allow us to find a win-win solution. I could send everybody on vacation this summer and we would give zero service. So we have to think about this. Yes, Troy, if you don't mind answering to the rest of Ms. Wright-Gilbert's question, that would be great.
Sorry, before you do, Mr. Charter, a couple points there. Number one, Madame Amilcar, I think I'd like to make it clear, I'm not using your information that you are putting out there through the translator, and I assume the translator translated correctly. I'm not using your information that you've been so generous with to us, which that's a whole other separate issue. You are supposed to provide us with information. I'm not using your information against you. I'm raising concerns on behalf of our operators. There's a difference. I know that you've been open to meeting with operators. That's not an issue. I've encouraged, you heard me, encourage operators to speak with OC Transpo Management. First and foremost, speak with their union representatives. I'm not discouraging that. I am in fact encouraging that. So your depiction of through your comments of what I said is incorrect. What I am saying, however, is that some people, just by fact of who they are, or perhaps they don't feel comfortable or whatever, may not feel comfortable speaking directly to management or to their union. Maybe as a result of they don't want, they're concerned about blowback on them. And so I'm providing them with a separate outlet. They can email me. It's not like they don't already email me. This isn't something new. It's not something scandalous. I get messages every single day from operators, every single day, emails, Twitter DMs, you wouldn't believe it. So I want to clarify that I'm not using your information against you. I do find that's an interesting viewpoint, and at some point we may need to explore that further. I am trying to help OC Transpo with this issue. I am trying to provide you with some advice, whether you take it or not, that's your decision. I'm trying to provide you with some advice and what I'm hearing from operators, because I'm concerned that you're not hearing the same thing. And I want to make sure that you're hearing what I'm hearing from multiple operators. So Mr. Charter, I apologize for interrupting you. I didn't want to leave that on the table, the accusation that I'm using information against OC Transpo Management. That is a personal affront to me, and I just didn't want to leave that on the table. So Mr. Charter, did you want me to repeat my question? Because it was literally like 4 minutes ago. So I want to make sure that basically it's what specific work is being done to the 2 trains that are out of service for long-term maintenance, the trains that were affected by the derailment.
Okay, no, Mr. Chair, no, thank you for the question. Those 2 vehicles, I mean, they have been, they've gone through a detailed inspection here on site. So we know largely what the work needs to be done, but the primary consideration for why the work hasn't been done here is that, obviously we have a certain number of hoists that we can pull the trains up on, and these trains will be they need to be worked on for several days. So the decision was made to put these trains off site so that they could be repaired there, which it wouldn't impact our day-to-day availability and reliability. This goes. I think it goes without saying. This is all at the cost, and all the cost and everything associated with it is at RTM. There's no cost to the city to transport these vehicles off site. The specific work they're doing though is largely with regards to the undercarriage of the train. We've talked previously about bogies, and the bogie has 2 axles and 4 sets of wheels. They really what they need to be doing is taking those bogies completely off those trains, and multiple bogies on the train, and replacing them and repairing them. That's the big piece of this. And because there's multiple bogies that need to be removed, the trains would be up on a hoist for an extended period of time. So Then while they're doing that work, they'll be doing some more detailed inspections as well as some, like they've done here with all the other fleet. We've asked them to do a detailed review, make sure that, all the critical safety bolts, all that whole process that we implemented with TRA for the fleet here, that's done as well oversight. So offsite as well too. So primarily about the undercarriage and the bogies. One of the trains, there is some body work that needs to be done with regards to the side panels, but it's really about the mechanical components underneath the train and making sure that they have the good amount of time to do all those repairs.
I appreciate that detail, Mr. Charter. Truly, I do. How long will these trains be out of service? Do you have an estimate, or is it too soon to say?
At this time, we don't have an estimate. I know that one of the trains, one half of one of the trains has been transported to Kingston now. The other half of the train will be transported, I think, beginning of June. So they will be out for several more weeks, if not months. And we're going to transport, essentially it's one train or, two halves at a time. So one train will remain here while they're working on the one, and then, later on in the summer, I believe we'll be looking at sending the other one. So it's a bit too early to tell, but I can say it won't be days, and it most likely is months, not days or weeks.
So I appreciate that, and I think this is work we want to do right rather than quickly. So I appreciate that. Two more questions. What's the track work that's being done?
I think Commissioner Gilbert, I think you're out of time.
Am I? I thought I heard 1 minute, but I could be wrong. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, the message I got was seconds. Eric, is there time left for 2 questions, or we'll come back to it?
About 30 seconds left, Chair.
Okay, can you do that in 30 seconds, Commissioner?
I can talk fast.
Thank you.
All right, the track work that's being done in June as a part of the regular maintenance. Can you give us a few more details on that?
Madam Amilcar, I'm okay with answering that question. The track work, so as I said, as Madam Amilcar mentioned, there's some track work that are doing just east of Herdman Station. So there is actually some track replacement work that's going on. So they'll be replacing some of the track, the rails around that curve. And then as well, they'll be doing some adding ballast, which is the rock that holds the rail and the ties together. They'll be adding some ballast and doing some vegetation control. But the primary work there, which requires the temporary service closure or the longer engineering hours overnight, is the track replacement at the location.
Thank you, Mr. Charter. Last question. The survey that you mentioned in your presentation, I understand was only offered in person. Why was this not offered online if we're looking for customer feedback on our service?
Merci. C'était tout simplement que nous avons pu aller.
Well, that's because we were very quickly able to go to the place where we wanted to question people.
Okay, I heard you, Mr. Cornelius, make one last comment. There's doing something quickly and there's doing something right. If you want to hear from customers, my suggestion is, and I do this for a living, consultation and engagement, is perhaps go to more than one source. I think I would highly suggest that you put this online. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to get one clarification as to what came out in that dialogue there. Renee, perhaps you can confirm this. We have a collective agreement that's good for another 5 years. So any suggestion of a strike would be considered an illegal strike at this time. So if employees are suggesting to the commissioner that they want to go on strike, it might be a good idea to for them to notify their union or talk to their union about that idea, with that or their supervisor.
Correct, Chair. You're right.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brockington, you're up next.
Thanks, Chair. Just a request, because it's going to be a month before the commission meets again, and we have a couple transit commissioners not present today, and more than half of City Council, of course, is not on the line today. But Madame Amilcar, can we get a commitment from you to get a memo out to us reporting progress on this matter? I think it would be beneficial, given that this first came to light through the media and there wasn't really outreach with transit commissioners from your office on this matter recently. Can we get a memo that sort of restates what the issue is, what's being done to address this issue, any progress on talks with the union so that we're all on the same page, we have all the information. I think that's important. And my second question is just, can you clarify the number of new operators that will be hired this year? I believe I hear 80 is strictly for the purpose of adding drivers to offset the requirements for the break, but we also need to hire new drivers because others retire, there's natural attrition. What is the total number of new drivers that need to be hired in 2022?
Merci, Conseiller Brockington. Chair, oui, nous pouvons émettre un memo.
Yes, we could certainly put out a memo to this effect and explain why we had to implement the Canada Labour Code change. Absolutely. In our planning for this year and for next year, with the opening of the Trillium line, we will need 280 drivers, including the 80 that we need to abide by the law. So if I had those 80 right now, I'd grab them because we would need to abide by the law. Now, in the 200 others that we need, that will be for the Trillium line, and it will be for the people who've gone off on retirement and the people that we anticipate will retire, because there is an average, like I told you before, 7 to 10 who will be leaving per month. So we can't wait for them to all leave to say, yes, we need people. This is why we're doing this massive campaign. And I'm really glad you asked this question, because it allows me to say to you that, you know, that's a lot of CVs we have to look at and that we've got to peel through and sift through. We're talking about thousands. And then we've got to go through all the necessary stages. And then what we've also seen, and this is why we're doing this so far in advance, is that before there was 5 or 6% failure rates, now it goes up to 15%. Either people don't understand what we teach them, because it has to be done safely, as you know, and sometimes the people see, oh, this is the reality of a driver, and they're like, no, it's not for me. So we have to take into account all of that in our planning so that we can have the necessary people. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate that information. I mean, it's a year-long process. The solution is not over a month or two. Thank you for the commitment to the memo. In addition to providing all commissioners and members of council with information about, you know, why this requirement is in place now, I think I have a little sympathy with the concerns raised recently that we've seen this train coming, pardon the pun, but we've seen this issue coming for years, and it seems to be coming to a head now. And I think that needs to be explained to the commission and council, is why are we in the 11th hour reacting to this situation and potentially putting our drivers in this situation? Again, I completely understand and sympathize with the concerns that they've raised, but that's something I need you to unpack for us, is to explain how we got to this point now when we've known about it for so long. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, si vous permettez, je vais quand même, malgré que nous...
In spite of the fact that I'm going to put out that memo, I still want things to be really clear, because this is really, really important part of the puzzle.
The government had advised that eventually that legislation will be implemented. Therefore, it was a general message. And it was clear that the government was telling us to continue as before, so that people that could do it ahead of time, but it was continue as usual. And you will be advised when the legislation is enacted, in effect. So when in the fall we learn that this legislation would take effect in February, we had to quickly find a solution. And what I said a few hours ago was that as soon as the government made this announcement that this legislation will be compulsory, we had a lot of discussion with my planning team and the union reps to see how we could lighten up that transition, how we could facilitate things, where would it be better to have a pause when it's possible, because so there were a lot of work done. But of course, we were in an exchanging mode, in searching for best practices. The government, the legislation became in effect, and we didn't have a choice. And you're right. We knew for quite a few months that it was coming up. So we had two choices: to be proactive and hire the 80 people we needed, let them sit down and wait, and pay them and say, one of these days we're going to need you. So, or we took a chance, especially with our financial issues in 2021. We had to review some routes to have a positive end of year. So that's a decision that I salute. If I had had to take it, I would have done the same. But that's why we are having this bit of a problem today.
I appreciate that information. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Ms. Amilcar, I think it would help if you're going to do a memo on this. We should also talk about any funding for this. For example, OC Transpo as an organization prior to this federal change used to pay the drivers in lieu of breaks. There was a cash exchange in a favor of not being able to provide the breaks. So now we don't have to pay that cash anymore, but that in itself can't fund this change. So was there federal money that came along with the additional break time, or is this all on the back of taxpayers?
Merci, Chair. Juste, si j'ai bien compris votre question.
If I understood your question, indeed, when it was said that this legislation would be implemented, and when the collective agreement was renewed, it was agreed that starting in April 2021, even if we were not giving the 30-minute pause because it was not compulsory yet, we were paying the drivers that should have gotten the 30 minutes. So they were not penalized because the legislation was not still in effect. But now that it is, all drivers, as soon as they worked for 5 hours, must have a 30-minute break. These 30 minutes are compulsory. The people are paid for these 30 minutes, and OC Transpo cannot ask a driver, even if I pay you, can you continue to work? No, it's a question of safety, and that's why this was implemented.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Ms. Amilcar, thank you so much for all this information. It comes as a bit of a surprise, I guess, for a lot of us. Throughout history, there's always been an event that's been a catalyst for change, and I'd assume when it comes to OC Transpo, the pandemic has certainly acted as a catalyst. I'm wondering, seeing that we have a need for our bus drivers are unhappy right now, and we have a need to hire more bus drivers, I'm wondering if now is the time to really take a look at even more change. What I'm referring to here is we still have buses rattling around the suburban areas with sometimes empty, sometimes with just a handful of people. And we know that that's very, very costly. And I'm wondering if has OC Transpo looked at these particular routes on the outside to see just how necessary they are, if we can amalgamate some of those routes and free up drivers for other routes that perhaps there's large cancellations on because of a variety of reasons. What I'm getting at is we are at a time, I think, in our history where we have to start looking at busing on demand. But I think we have those core routes that are being affected by the changes that we're seeing right now have to have bus operators, and they have to be reliable. So has OC Transpo taken a look at the suburban routes that perhaps are not always necessary right now to streamline them, and so we can open up the possibility of a different type of service?
Merci, conseillère.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll let Pat answer this in a minute. What I'd like to add is my fingers are crossed. I hope that at the next commission, we can give you a general picture of the service on demand. I just went to a conference in Germany, and the subject there is electric buses and service on demand. Those are the two hot issues. So I'm happy to hear that we're in tune. Now, Pat will be able to explain to you how the reviews are done. I know it's easy to say there's only 3 or 4 people on the bus, so they maybe it could be cut, but they may not have any other means of moving around these people. So Pat, I'll let you complete. Thank you, René.
Recap where we were just over a year ago right now. In March 2021, we brought to you a list of services that we would temporarily suspend or reduce, and those came into effect in June 2021. Those were, for the most part, services. So the services that were removed, the routes that don't run right now, were routes that ran to serve the same areas where another route was already in place, which required some people to change their travel time, some people to make another transfer, but where the two routes together were more than was needed for basic mobility. The other change that was made at that time was that most of the connection routes, which go from the suburban residential areas directly to the connection with the O train, most of those were reduced down to every 30 minutes during the rush hours, so that where there had been service running every 15 or every 12 or every 7 pre-pandemic, those are almost all reduced now to every 30 minutes. There were also a couple of routes, I think one of which is in Councillor Meehan's ward, which was reduced actually to run every 60 minutes because the ridership was at that level. So those changes have been in place for coming up on a year now. We continue to follow the direction of council on what to look at if we're considering further reductions. You know, as we outlined in another report that we brought to you in April 2021, where you reconfirmed the service policy standards that had been in place previously, and also gave us instructions on how, if we needed to reduce service by your decision, how we would conduct consultation, approval, information, implementation process. So we continue to be guided by those policy directions. But as I said earlier in response to, I think it was to Commissioner Curry, we are always ready to evaluate any suggestions that come from councillors. If there's a suggestion to make from a community to make a service more effective, to remove service that isn't being used, that if there's a community that finds that they no longer wish to have that transit service available to them, that's something that we could also evaluate and work with the councillor on determining what's the appropriate course forward. As always, we'll be guided by the policy direction of council.
Thank you, Mr. Scrimgeour. I can't see a community saying they don't want a route, but if we could provide an alternate way of getting to where they're going, that might. So, Ms. Amilcar, when you said that you went to this conference and it was a service on-demand service was one of the topics. Did they discuss the implementation of pilot projects, like how that could possibly work in a city the size of Ottawa?
Merci, conseillère. Chair, effectivement, comme je mentionnais.
Indeed, Chair, as I said, if it's not next month, it will be shortly after. We are preparing something to see how this on-demand service will work. There are several pilot projects underway. I think it was in April that I had the opportunity to go with CUTA. It was in Quebec, and I had talked then to several suppliers of that service because it requires a good computer logistic. I think Councillor Kavanagh had made this request in March, and that's why I had proposed that we had a transit commission on that subject issue only. And I'm happy because we took the initiative after Councillor Kavanagh asked for it, and I can confirm that indeed everybody's talking about this now in over 40 countries, so it's quite something. So we're coming up with something.
I look forward to that because I think, you know, as many of these countries realize that we have to change the delivery mode of transit. We need to get more people on transit, make it as easy as possible for them. And I do look forward to that. So I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So that concludes the update on the Confederation Line and bus service. Next up is item number 2, the paratransport service verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a deck on that. If we can have the deck, please. Well, I'll be very happy to provide this update with my colleague, and I will go over to you, Pat. Thank you.
Merci, René. Go to the next slide, please, Eric. So we're very happy to be speaking to you on Paratranspo. This update is a separate item today in keeping with the motion that was adopted by the Transit Commission at the last month. And we'll move on. We'll start by speaking about performance indicators, then we'll move on to some other points. As René has mentioned just now and in previous months, it's very important that we focus our time and attention, and you know, you've expressed your interest in doing the same on the performance indicators so that we can see where our service is doing well, where we're serving our customers well, where we can make improvements for them. And we need to, and we do, assess that on a continuous basis. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Eric. So here, as in the format you saw for conventional services, we have a general indicator, telephone booking line. Phone response times are quite short in comparison to where they were pre-pandemic. Ridership is returning very quickly, much more quickly on paratransport than on the conventional system, and on-time performance remains very high. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, on-time performance, as I said, remains very high, just as it was through 2021 on the orange line. There it is in the black line, continuing to be always in the high 90%. This is higher than we saw pre-pandemic and may have to do with things like reduced ridership, a little bit less pressure on the system, and over the months of the pandemic, reduced auto traffic congestion. But it has been high all year and continues to be that way. The next slide, please. This slide shows telephone response time. If somebody calls to book, And you can see that we had and all of these numbers, just in context, all of these numbers are what 3-4 years ago, before council took intervention and increased budget substantially for customer service staff. All of these numbers, high or low, are dramatically better than what people would have considered the best possible at that time. But you can see that when ridership was extremely low in 21, booking response time was much shorter. Booking response time, or telephone response time, got longer as ridership increased through the second half of 2021. But with our continuous adjustment of where we assign staff, that has got back down, and we're running plus or minus 5 minutes waiting time for most of this year so far. And we just continue to watch that every month. Take the next slide, please. This shows how many of the paratranspo bookings are made by telephone versus how many are made online. You may remember that for the last couple of years, while the full MyParaTranspo service was being developed, we had online web forums where people could make their bookings. That's what the orange bar represents in January, February, and the first half of April. MyParaTranspo, the full service where people can book on their smartphone or on their computer and can see what their choices are. That's been in place now for a month, since the middle of April. And we hope that the orange part of this bar will grow in future as more customers decide to make their trips online, make their reservations online. When they do so, that will of course relieve pressure on the phone lines and allow some of those numbers that you saw on the preceding page to get shorter still. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is about feedback, specifically negative feedback that we hear from customers. And this is measured on complaints per 1,000 trips on Paratranspo. And you can see in the black bar that the numbers for this year are, in that 3 to 4 complaints per 1,000 trips. And they are higher this year than they were through most of the months of last year. We can't say what the reasons for that are, but we can certainly say that in January, February, we needed to speak to our customers more about the difficulties we had in delivering service during, especially in downtown, during the downtown protests. What you can see down at the bottom of this in the data table is what the actual numbers were. And it's because this are per 1,000 trips, the numbers are quite different. So you can see, if you look at April 2021, there were 33 complaints, April 2022, 158. That doesn't mean that there's 6 times as many people complaining per trip. It's a little bit higher this year, but we'll have to see how this goes through the rest of the year and see whether there's any patterns here as we get into, we hope, more consistent operations away from the disruptions we had in the winter. The next slide shows what people are calling us about. And you'll see there that there's some change over time, depending on what is on customers' minds, what is their current main concern. We've grouped it into 5 categories. And you can see that service delivery in the darker blue down at the bottom is usually what people are talking to us about the most, especially during the winter. You can also see that booking is the sort of the second most, generally the second most most common thing that customers would call us about or speak to us about. And that's particularly been this year. We're continuing to delve into all the individual comments that people have given and, knocking off everything we can improve one by one. Smaller numbers you can see in gray are the proportion of people who've spoken to us about fares. I noticed that in December, that's very, very low because of course no fares were charged on the system in December. And then the other 2 that are smaller are the complaints about their own personal safety or security matters. And then the top lighter blue is about the number of people who are calling us to talk about service policy, like when we run service, how we run service, what directions we're following from council. Could we go on to the next slide, please, Eric? This is ridership for paratranspo in the same format as you saw earlier for the conventional system. What you can see in the dark bars is 2022 ridership increasing quite dramatically from 21 ridership. But you can see that increase started in summer of last year with a bit of a drop in January, February, which we can imagine is a combined result of the increased COVID infections that were going on with the Omicron wave, and also with the inability for some people to get out and travel during those protests downtown. March, as you saw for conventional, March may be a little bit higher because of the no charge fare incentive, and February would have been, of course, lower because of the protests. So there's no way yet that we can see what the pattern is here other than a general increase, but we'll have to see more months of what, again, we hope will be undisturbed operation. Maybe we could go to the next slide. So this is similar. This is about fare revenue. As you saw earlier, for the conventional service, again, you'll see March being markedly lower than February or April, and that's because no fares were charged on paratranspo trips to or from the downtown area. Following a decision of council, April would be, sort of back where that relationship is between ridership and fare revenue on a more regular basis. And we'll see how that continues through the rest of the year. And that is the end of this presentation. We'll go to the next slide, Eric, and we'll be happy to answer any questions about this.
Okay, thank you, Pat. We also have a delegation. How about we hear from the delegation, and then we'll just take questions on everything. So is Laura Shantz here?
I'm here.
Great. Okay, whenever you're ready, Laura.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to take a few minutes to speak on the issue of capacity, specifically as it relates to paratranspo. And just for a heads up, I'm speaking today as a member of Ottawa Transit Riders, and my comments today include the experiences of one of my fellow OTR board members and paraparity advocate, Sally Thomas. Excuse me. As pandemic restrictions lift and more people feel safe to leave their homes, it's become clear that more focus needs to be put on capacity levels at paratranspo, both in terms of the number of operators and on the vehicles themselves. It's my understanding that the current bus fleet has already reached the stated end of its life, and yet passengers and drivers alike are being forced to make do for another 3 years at least. These buses are increasingly breaking down down to unserviceable levels. Not a day goes by that there aren't many in the garage waiting for parts, and many drivers waiting for buses to come off the road so that they can start other runs. The other day, this is Sally, when it was 30 degrees out, the air conditioning unit in the bus Sally was on was not working. She considered reporting it, but found out the driver already had. The bus worked, that is, it rolled around, so the operator was told to drive it regardless. Furthermore, among the hires from the last hiring phase, paratranspo is now down to under 10 of those hires having remained. Drivers hired during the pandemic mistakenly thought the extremely low levels of ridership in 2020 were the norm. As they've discovered it isn't, it appears that they've quit. Reports have planned to hire 80 new drivers, plus those other hires across OC and para operations will not address the shortcomings unless there are buses for those people to drive. I want to draw some parallels here. We've had experience on the conventional OC Transpo network with low capacity. If we think back to the delay in the start of the LRT service, there were many parallels. Transit vehicles were kept in service past their life cycle end, causing delays, breakdowns, and missing buses. We also saw many operators leave in advance of the promised layoffs that were never in the end needed. And as a result, there were many, many cancellations that made transit service more unreliable and less valuable for riders. This led to a decrease in rider confidence and many reports of riders finding other ways of getting where they needed to go. In those instances, the city tried to work to win riders back to transit, especially focusing on those who had switched to personal vehicles. The difference this time around, when we're talking about paratransit riders, is that for many, there are no other options. They rely on para as an essential service and cannot simply switch to a personal car or to call a conventional taxi or roll to where they need to go, especially when the temperatures are extremely hot, as we've seen recently, or extremely cold. We cannot let the past challenges of OC Transpo be repeated. This is an essential service for para riders. They need to go to appointments, to pick up their prescriptions, do their shopping, and stay socially connected. These are basic, simple parts of everyday life, and they rely on para to get around. We need to make sure that service is there, and it is your job to make sure that they can do those things on their schedules. Transit is equity, and to ensure an equitable service, emphasis must be put on increasing capacity for folks who typically have no other options. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, is there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Meehan? Councillor Meehan?
Chair, I don't see Councillor Meehan's hand up, but mine is, but I'm happy to let Councillor Meehan go first if she would like.
Yeah, on my screen, it shows her hand up. If your hand is up, Commissioner Wright-Gilbert, that's not showing, but go ahead and you ask your questions and we'll see if we can engage Councillor Meehan.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't want to take Councillor Meehan's spot if it's hers, but I will try to be quick. Hey, Laura, thanks for being here. It's really good to see you, and thank you for sharing the perspectives of paratransport riders, specifically Sally. I know Sally well. So I hear you about the concerns with respect to the buses, specifically paratransport buses. And I'm concerned about what you've raised, which is buses that perhaps are not in the best condition. I mean, having to travel on a bus when it's over 30 degrees and the air conditioning isn't working is, in my opinion, akin to torture. That's awful. So I don't actually have a question, Laura, sorry. But I am gonna ask Mme. Amilcar and her staff, is it possible for OC Transpo staff to provide this commission with an email? It doesn't have to be a formal memo, just a bit of a reporting in terms of the state of our paratransport fleet, in terms of end of life dates, this is just off the top of my head, number of paratransport vehicles, specifically the buses, obviously, that are in disrepair, requiring repair, out of service for repair, and the number of trips that have not been able to be completed due to a lack of vehicle availability. Is that something that can be provided to this commission? Simple email, nothing fancy, just some data.
Commissioner, oui, c'est possible de...
Commissioner, yes, it is possible to provide this information, but all our trips are done on a daily basis. So I'll ask Jim if he has more statistic on that. All our requests are fulfilled on a daily basis.
I mean, that's excellent to hear that the requests are filled, but I think you can understand the concern that if the requests are being fulfilled by vehicles that perhaps are not in the best nick, not in the best condition, don't have air conditioning, for example, or any other, mechanical operational issues, it's a cause of concern for our paratransport customers who, as Ms. Shantz, eloquently said, that this is an essential service for them. This is how they get around town. They don't have any other options to get to their appointments, groceries, other things. So are you able to provide that information to the commission?
Jim, est-ce que tu as de l'information présentement?
Jim, do you have any information on that now? If not, we can wait till next meeting.
Sure, we can definitely provide an email on that and give you a status update on the para. But just to kind of give you some of the highlights, we bought those buses in 2015. So they're scheduled for a life cycling out in the 2024-2025 range. Right now, we're we're really watching the market for the e-bus technology and seeing if those buses could be replaced with an electric type of vehicle. So that's, you know, that's being taken into consideration too. On the buses right now in the current para fleet, we have 80 buses in the fleet. So we do, and we're running them with roughly a 20% maintenance spare ratio. So most days, and I can get you the data for our reliability on the para, and I'll definitely share that with you. We have a great reliability analyst team that runs all the data for me. On an average day, we have 15 buses out of that fleet, always in the maintenance for regular preventative maintenance, always doing the checks. We have dedicated people working on those fleets for the air conditioning roles and the specialty type of roles. And on most cases, the buses are at full availability. And any other buses that are not, like when we are in a tight frame for capacity, we always have extra capacity with the taxi services. So we do. But however, many of our passengers can't take taxis and they're single buses only. So we prioritize the buses as well. So as far as the trips go, we are seeing roughly 11,000 trips. So para is increasing, especially with the warm weather. We are seeing approximately 11,000 trips a week. So we are seeing, compared to pre-COVID, it was around 16,000 trips a week. So we are seeing the capacity issues where we were doing single trips only is getting more and more of a challenge to provide a single trip only on the bus because the ridership demand is coming up. So we are watching that closely and working close with the Pat's booking team on that. But we can definitely get you all that data this weekend.
I appreciate that, Mr. Greer. Oh, that was some feedback. I appreciate that, Mr. Greer. And yeah, if you can send that email, send it by email to the commission rather than waiting until the next meeting. Just recognizing that the next meeting is a month away and it is the last meeting before the summer break. I think that it's important that we have this data, and I appreciate that very, very much. And Laura, I really appreciate you showing up today and advocating for our Paratranspo customers and representing their views. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I think you've also started off questions to staff. So thank you.
Et j'ai maintenant d'avoir posé des questions au personnel. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour le personnel? Non? Bon, alors est-ce qu'on pourrait recevoir ce rapport-là? Merci. Reçu. Bon. Donc, cela met fin à notre mise à jour. Après ça, l'item numéro 4, le rapport de la performance du rapport OC Transpo pour la période qui a terminé au 31 décembre. Ça ne va pas prendre très longtemps. J'ai déjà parlé de mes préoccupations pendant la première partie de la matinée. Je tiens à mieux comprendre la performance des autobus. Ça veut dire que, bon, quand on obtient des données au niveau macro et que
but we really, at least I don't understand or truly understand or appreciate the finer data, particularly in my ward. Mr. Scrimger and I have talked about bus routes over the years. We continue to see reliability issues with a number of runs, and yet the number presented to the Transit Commission is very positive, 97%, 98%. So it goes back to, you know, initial discussions we've had over many years, and that is, how deep does the Transit Commission want to get in when we talk about bus routes? Is it more left up to local councillors to speak to Mr. Scrimger or staff about local bus issues, or does the Transit Commission have a greater role in trying to understand what the causes of reliability issues are with bus routes? And if there are links between multiple bus routes, that's where I think we take action. We have that dialogue with staff. So my question is to Mr. Scrimger, for bus performance data that's presented, how can I get a better understanding about bus routes? I don't want to talk about my ward because my role is really citywide. Performance. One route I'll just mention, Route 85. It's a multi-ward route that serves multiple wards. Pre-COVID, it was performing at 55% reliability. Chronically late, chronically issues. very difficult to address. But I want to have a better understanding of bus routes across the city. So Mr. Scrimgeour, I just want to plant that with you. I want to have a better understanding of how I can understand the data more at a micro level as opposed to what's presented to us, which is the macro level.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, those data are all available. For any trip, we report here on two major aspects of service. We report on the availability of service, and we have, for every trip that was not available, we do have recorded the reason why. We don't always have the reason for the reason, but we have where that comes from. The second is that we report to you on service reliability, whether for the frequent routes, it's about the waiting time, or for the less frequent routes, about the on-time performance. We have that data trip by trip, day by day. We've got all the information. We don't always have recorded the cause of the lack of punctuality or the lack of on-time performance, because much of that is externally generated, and our buses are just driving on the road with everything else. And if the road is moving slowly, we don't always have a way to record the causes. But if there's ongoing trends, that's where we first of all ask our operators what they're seeing, our supervisors what patterns they're seeing, and if necessary, that's when we go on and talk to traffic services about what they're observing about general moves. But I understand the two sides of what the councillor's considering here is at what level do we roll up and report the system-wide trends to the commission as a whole, and at what level do we do the case-by-case individual discussions with the councillors, and is there an in-between? I can say that we have all these data, and we're ready to talk at any time. I don't right now have suggestions of what the commission might want further to what they get now, or whether performance reporting would be done differently in a future term of council. I don't have any suggestions for you on that, but I understand the sort of the two sides of it that the councillor has outlined.
Sure, I appreciate that, Chair. I will reach out to Mr. Scrimgeour for a one-on-one chat. I think more or less we have service stability with the LRT and even Paratranspo, but I'm concerned that there continues to be bus reliability issues, and to try and get to that, I'll sit down with Mr. Scrimgeour and talk that out further. But I do think as we slowly transition to the next term of office, this commission will have to have bus reliability on its radar screen, because that's where you're going to retain and attract new bus riders and customers. So thank you. All right, thanks, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Gower, did you have your hand up? I'm experiencing technical difficulties here, so I've got to double check if anybody's got their hands up.
Thanks, Chair. I did, but I took it down, so no questions.
All right, thank you. So then if there's no other questions, is this report received as well? Received, okay, thank you. Now, is there any in-camera items? No. Are there any notices of motion? None, okay, thank you. Are there any inquiries? None, okay, thank you. Other business, anybody have other business for us today? Okay, and therefore the meeting's adjourned. Vice Chair, if you want to do the technical motion for adjournment, we can do that.
Thank you, Chair, that the meeting of the Transit Commission for Wednesday, May 18th be adjourned.
Good, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So the next meeting, barring any special meetings, will be June 15th, 2022, and the media availability will start at 12:30. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.